Have you ever wondered how life can flip in just 3 seconds? 3 seconds, barely enough to blink, barely enough to take a breath. But for one struggling single father and a fallen billionaire CEO, those 3 seconds weren't just a blink. They were destiny. A man at rock bottom, a billionaire about to lose everything, and a choice that would change both of their lives forever. This is not just a story about money. It's about pain, sacrifice, redemption, and an unexpected love that bloomed in the unlikeliest of places. Stay with me, because by the end, you'll see why millions around the world still whisper about the moment that made history. Part 1, Daniel's World, the Invisible Hero. Daniel Rivera lived a life that was quiet, almost invisible. Every morning began the same, the alarm blaring at 5 a.m., the soft shuffle of his daughter Mia's tiny footsteps, and the weight of exhaustion pressing down on him before the day had even started. He wasn't rich. He wasn't powerful. He wasn't even sure he was doing a good job as a father. But he was there. Every single day, without fail, Daniel showed up for his daughter. Mia was 6 years old, full of life, with a laugh that made strangers smile. But Daniel knew the truth: kids notice everything. She noticed when he skipped meals so she could eat. She noticed his shoes, patched with tape. She noticed the way he sometimes held his head in his hands after opening envelopes filled with bills. And yet, she never complained. She'd simply place her small hand over his and whisper, "It's okay, Daddy. We'll be okay." But Daniel wasn't sure they would. Years ago, before tragedy hit, he dreamed of being a business strategist. Numbers came to him like second nature. He used to sketch ideas for startups in old notebooks, filled with concepts that could change lives. But when his wife passed away from cancer, dreams became luxuries he couldn't afford. All that mattered now was survival. Part 2, Richard Caldwell, the Fallen Titan. While Daniel fought his invisible battles, another man, half a city away, was facing his own collapse. Richard Caldwell. A name that once shook the world of finance. He had been a genius of investments, the CEO of Caldwell Enterprises, a company that soared to impossible heights. His speeches were quoted in universities. His smile was plastered on Forbes covers. His empire seemed untouchable. Until it wasn't. Behind the glossy magazine covers and million-dollar suits, Richard had enemies. Partners who whispered betrayal, markets that shifted, and his own unchecked pride that led to reckless decisions. One by one, the pillars of his empire crumbled. First, the investors left. Then the media turned. Then the lawsuits began. By the time Daniel's story crossed his path, Richard Caldwell was no longer the golden boy. He was a man staring at bankruptcy papers, sitting alone in boardrooms that once buzzed with applause, drowning in silence and regret. He had money once. He had power once. But what he didn't have? Someone who truly believed in him. Part 3, The Collision of Two Worlds. It was supposed to be an ordinary day for Daniel. His manager at the hardware store asked him to deliver a set of urgent supplies to a hotel where a corporate event was taking place. It was supposed to be a quick drop-off: sign the form, unload the boxes, and leave. But fate doesn't ask permission. As Daniel wheeled a cart of supplies down a long hallway, a door suddenly swung open. He froze. Inside, chaos erupted. A dozen investors sat around a gleaming table, their faces red with anger. Charts and financial projections glowed on massive screens, filled with numbers and red lines plunging downward. At the head of the table sat Richard Caldwell, his once commanding figure slumped, his face pale, his hands gripping his head. Daniel knew who he was instantly. Everyone did. But the man before him looked nothing like the confident CEO on magazine covers. This man looked broken. Investors shouted. Voices overlapped. Accusations flew. And as Daniel stood frozen in the doorway, his eyes caught something so small, but so glaringly obvious to him. A mistake. The investors were misreading the numbers. A single miscalculation flipped the deal into disaster. But if adjusted, if reversed, the outcome wasn't just positive. It was explosive. Daniel's throat tightened. He wasn't supposed to be there. He wasn't supposed to speak. But his instincts overpowered his fear. "You're betting against yourself," he blurted. The room fell silent. Dozens of eyes turned toward him, the delivery man. A nobody. Richard's tired eyes lifted slowly. "What did you say?" Daniel swallowed hard. His heart pounded in his chest. "You're reading it backwards. Flip the terms, and it becomes your win." He moved closer, pointing at the numbers on the screen. He explained, hesitant at first, then with growing confidence. The room leaned in. The investors frowned, recalculating, checking their notes. And then, gasps. One investor whispered, "He's right." Another muttered, That's not just a win. That's a $1 billion turnaround." Richard's lips parted. For the first time in months, a spark lit in his eyes. And in just 3 seconds, everything changed. Part 4, a partnership born of desperation. After the investors left, still shaken, still whispering, Richard approached Daniel. "Who are you?" he asked. Daniel stammered, Just a delivery guy." But Richard shook his head. "No. You just saved me from losing everything." "That's not just anything." He begged Daniel to stay, to help him rebuild. At first, Daniel refused. "I can't. I've got a daughter. I work 2 jobs. I'm not someone who belongs in rooms like this." But Richard wouldn't take no for an answer. He saw something raw in Daniel, something brilliant, unpolished, but extraordinary. And so, reluctantly, Daniel agreed. Part 5, the challenges they faced. But success never comes without storms. 1. The doubt of investors. Every meeting was a battlefield. Men in suits sneered at Daniel's worn shoes, dismissing him before he even spoke. But then, when he opened his mouth, his strategies silenced entire rooms. Respect came slowly, painfully, but it came. 2. The mockery of media. Headlines blared, "Billionaire CEO trusts delivery man with billions." Cameras followed them, eager for failure. Daniel felt the sting of humiliation every time he saw Mia's classmates whisper about her crazy dad. 3. The weight of sacrifice. Daniel worked late nights, studying, strategizing. Mia would fall asleep on the couch, clutching a photo of him, waiting. His heart broke every time he missed a bedtime story. For the ghosts of the past, Richard confessed the truth of his rise, the people he'd stepped on, the mistakes he'd made. Daniel feared trusting him too much. Could a man who once built an empire of greed truly change? Yet through each storm, they stood together. Richard learned humility. Daniel learned confidence. And slowly, something deeper began to grow, not just partnership, not just friendship, but a quiet, undeniable love. Part 6, the final test. Months later, the moment of truth arrived. A global summit. The company's future rested on one deal. One wrong move, and everything would collapse. Daniel was terrified. For the first time, it wasn't Richard speaking on stage, it was him. He looked out at thousands of faces. His hands shook. But then he thought of Mia. He thought of Richard. And he spoke, not with polished words, but with raw truth. He told the world about second chances. About broken men daring to rise again. About the power of believing in people nobody else sees. And by the end, the entire room stood. Applause thundered. The deal was sealed. Caldwell Enterprises wasn't just saved, it was reborn. Its valuation hit the impossible, $1 billion. Part 7, the proposal. Richard turned to Daniel. Cameras flashed, investors cheered, but he saw only the man who had walked into his life when everyone else walked out. His voice trembled. "You didn't just save my company. You saved me. You saved the man I thought I lost years ago." He took Daniel's hands. "And if I could make one business proposal today, it wouldn't be for money. It would be for something far greater. Daniel, will you be my partner in life?" The room gasped. Daniel froze, his heart hammering.
And then, he nodded, tears streaming.
Yes. 1,000 times yes. Mia leapt to her feet in the audience, shouting, "That means I get 2 dads."
The room erupted in laughter and applause.
Ending, a legacy of kindness. From bankruptcy to a billion. From strangers to family. From despair to love. Their story reminds us that life can turn around in an instant.
That the smallest voice can change the loudest room.
That 3 seconds of courage can open the door to forever. So if you're struggling right now, don't give up. Your breakthrough might be closer than you think. Call to action. Speech balloon, tell me in the comments, what part of this story touched you the most?
Backhand index pointing right. Don't forget to subscribe to Be Kind Always for more powerful, life-changing stories.
Because kindness? It doesn't just change people. It changes the world.